Nigeria's fiscal policies have been characterized by substantial government spending to stimulate growth, address structural gaps, and tackle social welfare needs. However, a limited revenue base, over-reliance on oil revenue, and challenges in broadening tax collection have resulted in a growing dependency on borrowing to finance budget deficits. Meanwhile, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Monday announced that Nigeria's debt service to revenue ratio has decreased from approximately 97% when he assumed office 17 months ago to 65% currently. Now, the president stated while swearing in 7 new ministers at the council chamber of the State House of Abuja. Joining me to break down the key aspects of this recent fiscal policy framework, the borrowing trends, and the implications of rising debt levels for Nigeria's economic stability is an economist. Aliyu Ilias is one of our own. You're welcome to Business Express. It's been a while.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, before we delve into what concerns us directly, what's your take with the victory of Donald Trump in America? What does that portend for Africa? What does that portend for Nigeria? We're talking about tariffs. We're talking about, reaching out to other countries, reaching out deals, brokering deals, and all of that. What's the implication for us?
Right. I think first and foremost, America have decided who they want to actually lead them, and Trump has become the 47th president of America. And in terms of global community, though American president seem to be a global president, however, relationship will still continue, be it Kamala Harris or be it Donald Trump. It depends on our disposition as well. You recall even during the Tocano, what have you, he was the one who actually engineered. So a lot of things will happen. It depends on our disposition, on our position. And that's why as Africa and as Nigeria, we must try to position ourselves whereby we will not be susceptible to global decision or American decision. We have other trading partners that we can trade with, but we must manage our relationship with Donald Trump. But going forward, I don't see it being a challenge. It's going to come and go as other presidents has come and go.
You're sounding like you're not in support of the new administration, but that's just by the way. Well, but talking about Nigeria positioning itself for opportunities, whether in country or out of the country, fiscal policy is key. And talking about assessment of these fiscal policies, is Nigeria effectively balancing revenue generation vis-a-vis spending needs? What's your take on that, following what's been on ground, what you've observed from the reforms that are ongoing now?
Right, I think it's a quick win for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu because if you recall, immediately he became president, started getting the revenue. What we used to use our money to do, which is our first subsidy, was able to actually remove it. And you could also see throughout the Fourth Republic, I think he's enjoying more revenue compared to others, though it comes with its own challenges. But the thing is, it's macroeconomy, so it depends on how you actually do your spending now that will make sure you get that development, as it were. But one thing we must notice is that the dollar-naira relationship has actually eroded most of the gain that we should have benefited directly from that. However, we've seen a lot of intervention projects from Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We have also seen body language towards the governors on where they should channel money to. We have also seen that the fiscal FAC allocation has also benefited the governors. But it's not what only the federal government can determine. Federal government could have a focus if the state governments are not looking at the same direction. It's a problem, and that's why we always clamor for a national focus, like what we have during Obasanjo, where we call NEED, state seed, local government lead. So we must have that robust economic plan that everybody can key into. But in general speaking, I think he has gotten more revenue and is channeling those revenue to where he thinks it will benefit Nigeria. But have we seen the results? That is the challenge we are facing. We have not seen the results.
Okay. Talking about the challenge of results, yes, you've alluded to the fact that fuel subsidy removal is a blessing to Nigerians at this time, in spite of the challenges. Yes, the big elephant in the room still remains inflation. And we've been seeing from the monetary side and the fiscal side, government trying to ensure that this elephant is taken out of this room so that businesses can grow. How sustainable is all of this in terms of the impact, the positive impact, not just putting to the side the negative impact, though like you said, these are macroeconomic decisions. Should we expect immediate gains, or is it long-term gains?
Right. I think the Nigerian problem is much more of legacy problem, which we actually have seen ourselves. In as much as we removed fuel subsidy, we went ahead to actually float the naira, and floating of the naira has eroded a lot of gain, because we have really serious forex issue, and until you solve the problem of forex, I don't think we can go very well in our economy. Then let's come to inflation. If you look at most things that are causing inflation, what we actually know, which is energy problem, you could see that over time we see different increments in cost of fuel, and I'm not sure it will stop by now. And the alternative that we actually are also looking at, which is the CNG, we are seeing it, and most of us have engaged in it, but the accessibility and availability is also a problem. So I think government need to do more. Then coming back to CBN, I think CBN is applying what we call hawkish approach, and when you apply hawkish approach, it has its own negative impact too. And what is the impact? The negative is that you are now sacrificing growth to make sure that you reduce inflation, but I think that may not be a good one, and I want to advise that in the next MPC meeting, they must either tarry. They don't need to actually increase the MPR, because it's actually affecting employment, affecting manufacturing, and affecting small-scale businesses. So this is the area. If not, all the gain we have actually achieved is being eroded by this area as well.
Are you alluding to the fact that inflation is taking all of those gains?
Right. It's a clear thing that once there's inflation, most economic policy, most development, most growth will be affected negatively. So we must make sure that we reduce that inflation. And if you recall, we have 2 months that inflation actually reduced. It's a factor that maybe because of the farm producers at that period, but we must also tame the major problem, which is the energy problem, and also the issue of sacrificing growth because you want to reduce inflation.
Are you sure we're sacrificing growth? Well,
right.
That's not for you. That's not for you to answer. It's just a pose right. at this point. You also agree with me that the government is doing a whole lot in that light, talking about tax and fiscal reforms now. Taxes are that main source, that main revenue base for government in generating revenues to execute government business. There's been a lot of recommendations from the Taiwo Oyedele committee. We have seen some of the recommendations at the National Assembly, though is raising some misconceptions and some misunderstandings in some quarters as to some revenue agencies thinking, okay, with the reforms that are ongoing, particularly with the form that FRS is going to be taken, some responsibilities will be taken off some people. But that, by the way, with what the government is doing to raise revenue for government, don't you see that production is going to be increased in the shortest possible time? Are there possibilities for that?
Right. I think it's a good thing that we're reforming our tax at this time, because I think it was 1983 or so that we have really make sure we tamper with our tax. I think it's a very good thing, and Taiwo Oyedele and his team is doing wonderfully well. But you recall that they bring about 4 bills. So if one bill is having challenge, we can go with other bills and tarry with the one that is giving us challenge, because most state governors are thinking the issue of consumption tax and others, they are not okay with it. We can actually slow that one down, and actually I wouldn't want us to push everything out, because it has a lot of benefits to personal income tax. It has a lot of benefits to even small businesses, because if you look at it, they said if you have less than 25 million a business doing, you may be excluded from some tax. If you also have minimum wage, you may be excluded from tax. So there's a lot of benefits. So also the challenging part. So the challenging part can go return back to status quo, while the one that is good can fly. We cannot say we will push everything down. Perhaps that is a tool to actually generate revenue and also control. It's a fiscal policy tool that we need to really adjust and work on. So for me, I think Taiwo Oyedele and his team are doing very well. They may not have looking at the other side that people are thinking is challenging. So I think it's a good time we reform our tax system.
Okay, now let's talk about currency. The recent figures we're getting, Nigeria's currency, Nigerian naira, is kind of depreciative. This is against the dollar, which just as of yesterday, after the elections in the United States were announced, where Donald Trump has been announced as the winner of the polls, the dollar appreciated stronger, much more than other currencies around the world, and Nigeria not being an exception. Looking at Nigeria's situation with our currency level, what's the impact on our foreign debt at this time?
Right. We agree that we have challenges of supply side in terms of forex, because supply side will actually make will stimulate and make things get better. But the issue of debt, you recall that it is said that we have reduced our debt to revenue to 67%. But we must do more. And we must make sure that we avoid anything that will make us to go borrowing again, because for now we are doing well in terms of revenue generation. In fact, if you look at that tax, which is a progressive in nature, it's also meant to also generate more revenue. But at this time, I think with these coming budgets, I'm sure we are preparing for 2025 budget now. We must make sure that we manage the level at which we are going to propose to borrow more to actually manage our economy, because at this time we are in serious challenges and we must be cautious. That we must be cautious at nature, cautious optimism in terms of what we want to borrow. So we must reduce our borrowing, because if we continue to borrow, it's going to continue to affect. Though borrowing is not bad, but it depends on what you are
using it for.
Exactly, what you are using it for, and the condition now. Does the condition now allow you to borrow? That's what we need to review very well.
Okay, talking about does the condition now, I'm taking from your question, does the condition now allow us to borrow with ease or not? Talking about debt service. But you just mentioned earlier on where we were talking about is a proposition for now, but I think it's beginning to take course already, where we Nigerians agree that progressive tax is the way to go. Let the rich be taxed more and the poor be supported to grow, particularly in business-wise. With all of that coming into play, don't you think our debt service, the high debt service, is going to be reduced?
Well, debt servicing is a serious problem to any country, because it's deny you from a lot of capital projects, even some recurrent expenditure. Because if you even look at the what we are using to service our debt is almost equal to or more than capital expenditure. And what does capital expenditure entail? That's what me and other Nigerians will benefit from, such as social infrastructure, road, health, education. So we must do everything that will make sure that we increase our capital expenditure and make sure we reduce our debt service. And how do we reduce our debt services? There are a lot of policy that we can apply. I'm sure CBN will look into that properly. But the thing is, we must reduce adding to that debt. That's the major thing we must avoid now.
Okay, great. As revenues are trickling in, government is supporting businesses to grow. We just had a few days ago in the FCT in Akwa Ibom, in Bauchi State, across Nigeria, small businesses are benefiting from about 75 billion naira aid to small businesses to grow, and they are not just giving these monies out. Capacity is being built to ensure that these businesses survive. Aside to that, what is the way to go?
Right,
just your closing thoughts at this point.
It's a good one that we have government intervening and see the reason to support manufacturing sector, small businesses, even service sector to grow. But the main challenge is, if you look at Nigerian challenge, our main challenge lies on energy security, because no matter what you have, you must fall back to that side. So I think government should look into it, and other alternative that is available, they must make sure that they make it work. And beyond the federal government, states must also start doing something to actually solve the challenge of energy security in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Ilias. I must appreciate your contributions at this time, particularly your closing remarks. It's not just all about the federal government, but the subnational should do more to generate much more energy. We are seeing some states that are off the national grid. We hope that also helps to grow businesses. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.